I knew I was being fired before anyone said a word. Not because someone warned me. Not because I overheard a conversation. I knew because my calendar invitation disappeared. That might sound ridiculous, but when you've spent 14 years inside a Fortune 500 company, you learn to notice tiny things. The weekly executive strategy meeting had been on my calendar every Thursday for 7 years. At 8:12 a.m., it vanished. No explanation, no cancellation notice. Just gone. 3 minutes later, I received another invitation. Subject, immediate leadership review. Location, conference room. Atlas attendees, HR, legal, executive operations. No agenda, no message, nothing. I stared at the screen and smiled, because suddenly everything made sense. The strange behavior over the previous week, the hushed conversations, the executives avoiding eye contact, the CEO suddenly insisting on handling my division personally. They thought they were clever. They thought they were about to save the company millions. What they didn't realize was that 3 years earlier, I had predicted this exact moment. And I had left myself a little insurance policy. An insurance policy that was about to cost them far more than they ever imagined. My name is Rebecca Hale. At the time, I was Chief Revenue Officer at Meridian Dynamics. For 14 years, I helped build that company from a struggling startup into a billion-dollar enterprise. I wasn't the face of the company. That was Ethan Cross, the CEO, the guy who loved magazine covers and keynote speeches. I was the person who actually made the numbers happen. Every major client, every major acquisition, every record-breaking quarter, my fingerprints were on all of them. Yet somehow, Ethan always found a way to take center stage. I tolerated it because I cared about the company. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was believing loyalty worked both ways. When I arrived at Conference Room Atlas, the atmosphere felt like a funeral. The blinds were closed, the lights were dim. 3 HR representatives sat at one side of the table, a lawyer sat at the other, and in the center was Ethan. He wouldn't even look at me. Interesting. I took a seat. Nobody spoke. Finally, Ethan cleared his throat. "Rebecca, this is difficult." I almost laughed. Whenever a CEO starts a sentence like that, somebody's life is about to get worse. "We've decided to move in a different direction." There it was. The corporate execution order. No warning, no performance concerns, no investigation, nothing. Just 14 years erased in one sentence. I folded my hands calmly. "May I ask why?" HR jumped in immediately. "This decision is final." Translation: "We don't actually have a reason." Ethan finally looked at me. "The company needs new leadership." That was funny, considering we'd just completed the most profitable year in company history. I nodded. Understood. The entire room looked confused. They expected tears, anger, a scene. Instead, I simply stood, removed my employee badge, placed it on the table, and smiled. "Good luck." Then I walked out. The moment the elevator doors closed, I burst out laughing. Not because I was happy, because they had just made the dumbest decision of their careers. 3 years earlier, Meridian had almost lost me to a competitor. A private equity firm offered me an absurd compensation package. When Meridian asked me to stay, I agreed on one condition. I wanted protection, real protection. Not promises, not handshakes. Paper, signed paper. Their legal team drafted the agreement. I improved it. They signed it. Every page, every clause, every amendment. Most importantly, Section 14. A clause so boring nobody bothered reading it, except me. I went straight to my apartment, opened my laptop, logged into my secure archive, and there it was. Section 14. Still beautiful, still intact, still signed by everyone. The language was simple. If Meridian terminated me without documented cause within 60 days of any major compensation event, every pending bonus, every equity grant, every retention incentive would immediately accelerate, in full, plus penalties, plus legal costs, plus interest, the total package, a little over $8 million. And here's the best part. My annual compensation review was scheduled for the following morning, less than 24 hours away. The company thought firing me early would save them money. Instead, they had activated every protection mechanism in the contract. I didn't need a lawyer to tell me that. I helped write the clause. By noon, my phone started exploding. Former colleagues, friends, people fishing for information. I ignored them all. Then one call came through. Private number. I answered. Rebecca. The voice belonged to Daniel Mercer, head of corporate counsel, one of the few competent people left at Meridian. Please tell me you have a copy of your executive agreement. I smiled. I have 6 copies. Silence. Then, Jesus Christ. That told me everything. He'd already found the clause. What happened? I asked. Daniel sighed. The board just discovered Section 14. How are they taking it? Another pause. Imagine someone finding out they've stepped on a landmine after hearing the click. Apparently, chaos had erupted. The finance department recalculated the payout, then recalculated it again because they assumed the first number was wrong. It wasn't. $8,400,000, possibly more depending on stock valuation. The CFO reportedly thought a decimal point had been misplaced. It hadn't. Meanwhile, Ethan was losing his mind. According to Daniel, he spent 2 hours demanding someone find a loophole. Any loophole. One problem. There wasn't one. The clause was airtight. Every signature was valid. Every approval existed. Every document was archived. The company's own lawyers had reviewed it years earlier. Then came the moment that changed everything. The board started asking questions. Not about me, about Ethan. Specifically, why had he fired the company's highest-performing executive 24 hours before a major compensation event? Why was there no documentation? Why wasn't legal consulted? Why wasn't the board informed? And most importantly, who approved this disaster? The answer was simple. Ethan, just Ethan. 3 days later, I received an email. Settlement proposal. Confidential. Urgent. Very urgent. They wanted to resolve everything quietly. Of course they did. Because the payout wasn't the biggest problem anymore. The board had launched an internal investigation. Shareholders were asking questions. Senior executives were panicking. The company wasn't just facing a financial loss. It was facing embarrassment. And corporations fear embarrassment more than bankruptcy. I didn't respond immediately. I let them wait. For 48 glorious hours. Then I replied with 2 words. Send numbers. The revised offer arrived 15 minutes later. $8 million. Paid immediately. Full benefits. Accelerated stock vesting. Positive reference. No litigation. No arbitration. No delay. No games. The company had surrendered. But the best part came later. A month later. I was having lunch with a former colleague when she showed me a news article. Ethan Kross had resigned. Officially. The statement said he was pursuing new opportunities, which is executive language for. The board pushed him out before he caused more damage. The chairman, the man who once ignored my advice for years, personally called to apologize. Not because he felt guilty, because the board finally realized something. Ethan had been the face of the company, I had been the foundation, and they had confused the two. 6 months later, I joined a rival firm, not as an employee, as a partner. Ownership, equity, a seat at the table, the things Meridian never thought I deserved. Our first year shattered revenue records. Several of Meridian's largest clients followed me. Apparently, loyalty works differently when people actually respect you. About a year after everything happened, I received one final message. A former coworker sent me a photo. Meridian headquarters, executive lobby. The giant portrait of Ethan Kross had been removed. In its place hung a new plaque, a quote from the company's revised governance policy. I laughed when I read it, because the wording sounded very familiar. I had written it years earlier. It said, "The cost of ignoring expertise is rarely visible until the invoice arrives." And trust me, they got the invoice. Every penny of it.